So this method of shadow work that I'm about to teach you is divided into steps. First, you are going to work on your past and do shadow work on your past. And then you're going to do shadow work on your present situation, on your current life and relationships. Now, with regards to the past, first you're going to take an inventory of your personal past from the beginning of your memories up to the present. Then you're going to go back in time and work on your parents and do some shadow work with regards to your parents. Then you're going to keep going back and do some shadow work with regards to your ancestral line. And then you're going to connect that to the larger narrative of Western civilization, which I have thoroughly traced in one of my videos on this channel, The Golden Chain. So once you've done your personal work on your past, then you're going to put all the results of that work in these magical healing vessels. And then you're going to do some creative alchemy to transmute the materials from your past. Then you're going to work on your present and do a lot of analysis of your present situation, your relationships primarily, your relationship with your spouse, your girlfriend, with the opposite sex, or with whoever you are attracted to, your friendships, your colleagues, and your relationship with the outside world, because that is a precious opportunity to do shadow work as well. Also, your relationship with your own self right now, how you feel like you're progressing, where you feel you are stuck, where you feel your pathways are blocked, where you feel you are blocking your own pathways due to fear and self-doubt. So after you've done all that work on your past and your parents' past and your ancestral past, you're going to have a lot of new material to help you and a lot of new perspective to help you work on your present. The goal of shadow work is to be whole, is to reverse the splittings that have happened in your life as a result of trauma, as a result of repression. You're going to reclaim those parts that split off, and then you're going to integrate them and work on illuminating them. That will bring you to the present, and then you will have the opportunity to open up your pathways in the present and unblock your pathways, because that is the effect of effective shadow work, that your pathways open, that you feel renewed vigor, that you feel renewed inspiration, that you feel a sense of wholeness, a sense of power and well-being and inspiration. So now we're going to get into the first step of the process. The first step of the process is to get a journal specifically devoted to shadow work and alchemy and personal spiritual work. This is a journal that should not have any lines. It should be blank pages, because you're going to be writing and you're going to be drawing. Yes, drawing. Drawing is an important part of the alchemical process. So this journal will serve as your sacred vessel. It is going to catch all the work. It is going to catch all the raw materials for you to alchemize. So this journal is important. You need to have a journal specifically dedicated to this work. Once you have a journal, we can move on to step 2. Step 2 is the inventory process. You're going to take an inventory of your past. We're now doing shadow work on your past. This stage of the process is like soul retrieval work. You're going to be retrieving the parts of your soul that split off. The parts of Mercurius, let's say, that became fragmented and darkened. So parts of your soul, parts of your astral body, remember, try to think of it as a higher body. Your psyche or your unconscious is an actual higher body, but it needs work. It is in shadow. Sometimes it is possessed. It is invariably fragmented. Parts have been split off. Parts have been suppressed. It is necessary to retrieve a lot of these parts that have been split off and are hiding in the unconscious now, and to reunite them with your ego. We're doing a work now of reunion. We're doing a work of soul retrieval and reunion with parts of your own soul. So this second step involves doing an inventory of your soul's history. These are all the times when a piece of your soul split off. Now, this can happen especially as a result of trauma. Trauma splits the soul. A piece of the soul splits off and goes into hiding, and it can often even be abducted by the traumatizing forces, demonic forces. Trauma comes from demonic influence, invariably. When trauma is inflicted on the soul, a piece of the soul splits off, and it's like it becomes abducted by darkness. So the soul retrieval work that is integral part of shadow work involves going into the realms where these fragments are being held and retrieving them. And then comes the hard part of reintegrating them. So we're going to do an inventory of your personal past, paying particular attention to the traumas and the splittings and the repressions. Then we're going to move back to your parents, and then back to their parents, and further back to your ancestral lines. And then you're going to link that to the larger overarching story of Western civilization. So you can link your personal shadow work to your ancestral shadow work, and your ancestral shadow work to the shadow work of the civilization in which we are a part, Western civilization, because shadow work is taking place at all levels, personal, transpersonal, and macrocosmic at the civilizational level. So once we've achieved all that, we're going to put everything in vessels and work on transforming them. Then we're going to work on the present. In the previous video, I explained how the guiding spirit of shadow work, Mercurius, absorbs all the traumas that have been inflicted on your soul. It is necessary now to take a conscious inventory of the history of your soul. That means you need to go back into your past and your memory and contemplate all the times that something happened in your soul where there was a trauma or some sort of splitting, some sort of fragmentation, or some sort of repression, because Mercurius becomes a fragmented autonomous being when there is a trauma. So for example, God forbid, but let's say there was a sexual trauma. In the sexual trauma, there was a splitting in your astral body, a splitting in your soul. In this moment, your ego split off from Mercurius, and Mercurius took on a life of its own and became somewhat darkened from the trauma. Let's say that there was a moment in your childhood when one of your parents said something really hurtful to you, and that triggered a lot of shame in you, and then you started repressing something in yourself. In that moment that you started repressing something split off. You need to go back through your past and really remember all the splittings. So think back to your childhood, think back to your upbringing with your parents, think back to the difficult things that you witnessed with your parents, think back to school and any bullying you experienced in school. Think back to any time you experienced deep shame, any time you experienced deep fear. Go back over your past, take an inventory, write it down, write it down. We're doing modern alchemy here. In modern alchemy, your journal is your vessel, and writing it down is the magical equivalent of putting the ingredients, the alchemical ingredients, in the vessel of transmutation. So take an inventory, write it down, go chronologically. Try to recall the real formative events in the life of your soul, the life of your feeling, the life of your emotions, when you were hurt, when you were scared, when you were traumatized. So do that chronologically, starting with your childhood, and write these down. You're putting the ingredients in the alchemical vessel now. And a warning, when you start writing these down, you will instantly feel the magical effect of this. You will feel that the ingredients are now in the vessel, and you might suddenly feel the weight of them. You're doing shadow work already. Writing it down is the beginning of shadow work. Recalling it is the beginning of shadow work. Writing it down is making progress towards the goal. Now, move to the onset of puberty. Recall what happened to your soul, your astral body, your psyche, your emotions, the life of your emotions, the life of your desires. You're taking a history of your astral body. Your astral body is responsible for your desires and your emotions, your wants, your fears, your complexes. Your astral body is what stores trauma. You're taking an inventory of your astral body. So now you're in adolescence. Recall the onset of sexual maturity. Recall your initiation into sex. What happened? What were your first experiences? Recall your initiation into masturbation. Recall your initiation into pornography. Recall your initiation into having a crush on a forbidden love. Recall all those feelings and take account for what happened. How did you feel? Did you repress them? Did you feel shame? Or did you embrace them? And did you start masturbating at an early age? Take account of these things. And now take account of what was going on inside your astral body, inside your alchemical vessel when you were a teenager. Were you fantasizing? What were your fantasies like? Recall, write them down. Write about your first sexual encounter. Was it good? Was it not good? Were you raped? If you were raped, write it down. This is a very serious impact on the astral body, and your mercurial spirit, your guide of shadow work, will be deeply affected by an event like this. Write it down. You're taking an inventory. Think back to your family traumas. Did your parents fight? Did they get a divorce? Was there abuse in your family? Was there physical abuse? Was there verbal abuse? Was there sexual abuse? Was there substance abuse? Was there addictions in your family? Were your parents alcoholics? Were your parents drug addicts? What about you? What was your history with drugs? When did you start drinking alcohol? Did you have experiences where you're drinking alcohol and maybe you started to have sex with people? Did you start partying? Recall especially your initiation into sex. This is a huge part of shadow work, is your initiation into sex. Write it down. You're taking an inventory. Write it down in your journal. This is just the first stage. The first stage is taking inventory. After you take inventory, you're going to start working on it. You're going to start transmuting it. So now that you've taken an inventory of your personal past, move now to your parents. What do you know about your parents' past? What traumas did they suffer? What were their parents like? What was their upbringing like? What was their initiation into sexuality like? What traumas did they endure in their life? What fragmentations and soul loss did they endure in their life? Did they have a spiritual calling that they didn't follow? Did they crush something in their soul out of pressure from their parents? Maybe one of your parents was a very sensitive spiritual person, but they had to squash it in order to conform to society. Write it down. Put it in the vessel. Were your parents sexually abused? Were your parents traumatized? What traumas did your parents live through? We're going back now. You started with your personal past. You've taken an inventory of your personal past. Now you're going back to your parents. It's important to go back to your parents because the traumas that your parents have endured get passed on to you and become part of your shadow work. So go back to your parents, write it down, put it in the vessel. And as you put it in the vessel, you may feel even more weight. That's the materials of your shadow work entering into the vessel. Don't worry, you're going to transform it. Don't worry, you're going to transmute it. It will turn from a heaviness into a comfort. It will turn from a heaviness into a lightness. So now you're going to follow your family history back even further. You're going to trace it back as far as you can. What do you know about your genealogy? Where did your parents come from? Where did your parents' parents come from? Where did your parents' parents' parents come from? Trace your family lines back to cultures. What cultures are they coming from? During what periods of time? Write down where and during what time. Because the next step is to research the history, the historical traumas. You're going to now research the historical traumas that have been inflicting your family's ancestral line. Shadow work begins with the personal, but it keeps going back into the transpersonal. You're going to follow your family line back now into history and research what happened, what traumas, what soul loss, what splitting, what repression, what traumas, what wars, what atrocities. So now that you've connected your personal with your parents, your personal history with your parents' history, and your parents' history with the ancestral history, now you need to connect your personal ancestral history to the big picture, to the larger story of Western civilization. On my YouTube channel, you will find a long narrative about this story. Find this narrative, study this narrative. It's called the Golden Chain. This Golden Chain is the essential story of the shadow work of Western civilization, the battle between light and dark in Western civilization. It's necessary to connect your ancestral line to this larger overarching narrative. If you can connect your family's line to this larger overarching narrative, you will really be able to see the big picture. It's necessary to make this connection. So please have a look at my other videos on the golden chain and on the esoteric history of Western civilization. And this will really help you frame the whole story and locate your family's story within the larger narrative. Okay, so now that you've done this inventory, now we're going to do the alchemy. We're going to put these ingredients in magical alchemical vessels. So now we're going to use the magic of art, because shadow work is alchemy, and alchemy is an art and a science. You've just taken an inventory. You just analyzed your past. You just recalled your past. Think of that as a kind of science. Now we're going to do the alchemical art. So now we're going to do something I call vessel work. This is creative alchemy. This is magic. So Mercurius, the guiding spirit of shadow work, is a mirror. He shows you what's going on in your soul. He, she reflects for you what's going on in your soul, both within yourself, when you go in yourself and you encounter the spirit in yourself, and also when you encounter the spirit through other people in your outer environment. In all cases, this guiding spirit is showing you what's going on in your soul. So Mercurius works as an image. So we're going to harness this capacity of working with an image. And we're going to do some magic here. You're going to do some magical alchemy in your soul. So look back over your inventory and find the critical turning points in the embryology of your soul. Imagine that your soul is an embryo that's growing. Find the critical turning points where something changed, something fragmented, something was lost, something was split off and repressed. Find the key turning points in the story of your astral body, the key turning points in the story of your soul. So review your inventory of your personal story and locate these critical turning points in your life story. Once you've found these events, now we're going to do the alchemy on these events. So in your journal, on a blank page, draw an alchemical vessel, literally a glass vessel. It can be circular or it can be oval, but it should have like an opening at the top with a stopper in it, like a cork. You're literally drawing a glass vessel on a piece of paper, and this is going to be magical because what you put into this vessel is going to do this alchemical process on yourself. You're now working with the magic of Mercurius, as within, so without. So understanding is as above, so below, as within, so without. We're going to harness that in order to do conscious alchemical work. So what you're going to put in this vessel, in your journal, is the contents of your soul. So you're going to be working with your soul in projection, very consciously in projection. So remember those events, those critical turning points in the life of your soul, when something split, when there was a trauma. And for each of these major events, you're going to put that event in the magical soul vessel. You're going to depict it in the soul vessel. And if you're depicting an event where there was a trauma or a splitting, you're going to put the part of your soul that split off back in that vessel. And be prepared when you do this, because this is magic that you're doing here. And when you do that, you're going to feel that part of your soul start to come back. You're going to feel the weight of it. You're going to feel the presence of it. Don't worry. We're going to transmute it. It's not going to stay heavy, but you need to have a certain amount of capacity to bear it in order to do shadow work. In order to work with the contents of your shadow, you need to be a warrior. You need to be able to bear it. So for the events where there was a traumatic splitting, you're going to put in the vessel what split off. In the events where there was some sort of repression that started taking place, maybe due to shame, maybe due to criticism, maybe due to fear, you started repressing something, you're going to put into the vessel what you repressed. Now, this does not need to be amazing art. It can be very crude, but you're going to draw. You're going to draw like you were a child. Everybody can draw. It doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to be raw. It just has to have feeling. You need to draw with feeling. Put your feeling into it. It does not matter if it's pretty. Maybe you lost somebody very important to you died. Who you lost, put in the vessel. We're including everything. Shadow work is necessary because parts of our soul split off as we go through life. Now we're doing alchemy on the parts that split off, so we're inviting. We're calling them back. If you were tormented by demons as a child, put those demons in the vessel. If you saw ghosts as a child, put those ghosts in the vessel. If you saw ghosts, but then you shut them out because it scared the shit out of you. Put your fear in the vessel, but put the thing that you are afraid of in the vessel. Alchemy is about catching everything in the vessel, everything that you drummed up in your inventory. We're now putting in these vessels. Now draw, and draw. Draw each of these events, these turning points in the life of your soul, and put them in this vessel. We're not joking around here. This is powerful work. You're really doing shadow work when you do this. Be prepared. Be prepared to feel the weight. Be prepared to feel the sadness. Be prepared to feel the sexual arousal. Be prepared to feel the dread. Be prepared to feel everything. You can't do shadow work if you're not prepared to feel. You need to do shadow work because parts of you have split off and you're calling them back. You're calling them back because the purpose of shadow work is union. The purpose of shadow work is to reunite with the parts that split off. And when you can reunite with the parts that split off, you grow. You have a huge growth spurt. So be prepared to include everything that you're afraid of, everything that you're ashamed of, everything you don't want to look at. Have courage. This is the way. So as you're drawing, continue to write as well. You're going to put images in these vessels. I encourage you to color them. Get some pencil crayons and color them. You're doing magic. You're depicting the contents of your soul, the contents that have split off, and you're now putting them in the vessel. You're doing a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're already reuniting with your shadow already. You're already doing soul retrieval by doing this. By putting the parts that split off in the vessel, you're already doing a magical spell on yourself to do soul retrieval work. But soul retrieval work is the easy part. It's the illumination process that's difficult. It's easy to get the soul, the part that split off, back in the vessel. But then the real work starts. Then you have to reintegrate. Then you have to heal what comes back. Because what split off became very dark. What split off became very judged, very angry, very combative, very self-destructive. What split off became addicted to drugs. What split off became addicted to sex. What split off became addicted to masturbation. What split off became addicted to depression. All these parts that split off, they now have this weight. So the first step is to bring them into the vessel. That's the soul retrieval part. That's the easy part. Now comes the work of transmuting, of illuminating, of healing, of reuniting. Okay? So have courage, be strong. We're doing the work. You're doing the work. So let's keep going. So the personal vessels are the most important part. But if you're really going to do the shadow work comprehensively, and it needs to be comprehensive in order to really be effective, then you're going to want to do a few vessels for your parents. Do some vessels for your father and your mother. Well, we're at some crucial turning points in the life of their soul. Maybe there was a central trauma. Maybe there was a central pain. Maybe there was a central thing that happened in their life that you can really see, you can really now appreciate how it set a whole trajectory for their life story, a trajectory that affected you, something that haunted your family. What was an event that affected your father, that haunted him for his whole life, that informed how he would be a father to you? What was an event in the life of your mother that really triggered something in her? What was a real important turning point in the life of your mother? Do some vessels for your parents as well. Now, they don't need to be very detailed. They can be very quick, but the act of putting your recollection of this event or your understanding of this event in the vessel is in itself very significant and very powerful. Now, do the same thing for what you've learned in your historical inventory and your historical research about your family line. What was a large trauma that affected the people? Maybe there was a war. Maybe there was a genocide. Maybe there was a massacre. Maybe there was a colonization, a collective trauma. Capture that collective trauma. A collective soul loss. Capture that collective soul loss. Capture it in the vessel. So you have your personal vessel work, and this should be the most events, the most vessels in your personal work. Do some vessels for your parents, and then do a vessel, at least one vessel for your ancestral line, or like if you come from, if your lineage goes in a couple directions, maybe one for each lineage. Okay, so now we move on to the next step, how to transmute this work. You're going to dive now into your own astral body and work there. This is something along the lines of shamanic work, or if you're familiar with Jungian psychology, this is the kind of work that Jung described as individuation work. This involves techniques of trance, of altering your consciousness, and you have a number of options for how to do that. But altering your consciousness in order to bring your ego awareness deeper into your astral body so that you can do things there, so that you can work there. So the first techniques were pioneered by Carl Jung. There are two of them, dream work and active imagination. Dream work is straightforward enough. It is keeping a journal of your dreams. You keep a journal by your bedside with a pen and a page open and ready to go. And as soon as you get up, instead of checking your phone, instead of checking WhatsApp, instead of going to Facebook, as soon as you get up, you recall and write your dreams down. There is a precious moment when you get up where you're still able to recall your dreams. Some people are gifted with dream recall and they can recall their dreams very easily without even writing them down. But for the most part, the discipline of writing the dream down is very important. So you write the dream down first thing in the morning, and then before you go to bed at night, you review the dream and you write down any further insights you have about the dream. This is sending a message to Mercurius that you are ready for dream messages. This is interacting with the guiding spirit of shadow work, letting him, her know that you are listening to your dreams. And so you will receive shadow work guidance in your dreams. Write down your dreams. The other form of inner work that you can do is active imagination. And there's different kinds of active imagination you can do. So active imagination involves entering into a light trance where your astral body becomes activated. And then there's a few things you can do. Sometimes you will go on a kind of journey and you will experience a kind of flight of imagination journey. Other times you can actually engage in a dialogue with parts of your own astral body. So this is very effective and powerful, this dialogue, and I really recommend this dialogue. So take a look at your inventory, take a look at the major splittings that took place in the life of your astral body, and then invite these parts of your astral body that have split off and in some cases have been repressed, invite them to speak with you, call them, invoke them. Invoke Mercurius to help you with this dialogue. Mercurius, the guiding spirit of shadow work, can open up the connection between your ego and your astral body, can open up the connection between your ego and these fragments. Mercurius is the one that has one hand with your ego, that's holding on the thread of your ego, and the other hand is holding on to the thread of the soul fragment. Mercurius is keeping your ego connected to your soul fragment. It's this astral thread that keeps things connected. So Mercurius is crucial to do soul retrieval work because Mercurius is the guide of the soul retrieval work process, because Mercurius is the one who is bridging the connection between your ego and the part of your soul that has become fragmented. So Mercurius can take you to that fragmented part of the soul and can bring that fragmented part of the soul to your consciousness. So invoke Mercurius. Find some way to invoke this guiding spirit of shadow work to help open your active imagination session. And then call this fragment of your soul back and have a conversation with it and write it down. Like, make it like a kind of a drama script, like a screenplay. Like, write your name in colon and like, I'm calling you, come and talk to me. And then write the name of the soul fragment, maybe like, I don't know, repressed sexuality spirit, or inner child that fragmented off during a child trauma, like inner child, lost, fragmented inner child, colon. And so call this part of yourself and then listen. Now, in order to do this, it's necessary to shift your consciousness a little bit. So there's a number of things you can do to do that. Binaural beats is very effective. Listening to a trance-inducing music, listening to a repetitive shamanic drum beat, dum, 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 dum. All of these things alter your consciousness and put you in a state of trance. It's necessary to enter into some degree of trance in order to do active imagination work, because your ego is descending into your astral body and your astral body is coming alive. So engage in facets of your astral body in dialogue with the objective of reuniting. So remember, the soul retrieval part is the easy part. What's difficult is what comes after that. So the lost or the repressed or the shadowy or the possessed soul fragment comes back, but now you've got to deal with all the effects of being fragmented for all those years and fragmented and pushed into the underworld. A lot of the times the parts of our soul that fragment, they go into the underworld and they start becoming bad. Like if a part of our sexuality was fragmented due to sexual trauma, then our sexuality goes into a dark realm and becomes kind of self-destructive and develops the ability to feed off negative energies. It becomes maybe even a little vampiric. Maybe it becomes a little numb. Maybe it even becomes a little enslaved to demonic forces. So if you suffered a sexual trauma, if you experienced a sexual trauma, and you call your sexuality back into consciousness, back into the vessel, be ready to receive a heavy presence. Be ready to receive a rebellious presence. Be ready to receive an angry presence. But it's necessary now to reach your hand out with sincerity and ask for union. Ask for an alliance. Ally with your shadow fragments. Ally with them. Ask what they need. Ask how they're doing. Ask how they feel. And then listen. And then write it down. Say, hey, I'm calling you. And then you wait and you listen. And then a voice says, I don't want to come. And then you say, why not? And then you listen. And then you kind of have this feeling or this voice that says, because I'm mad at you. And then you say, why are you mad at me? And then the voice says, you don't want to know. It's like, no, I do want to know. Tell me. And then a huge tirade could come out. This is shadow work. You're reuniting with your shadows. You're building a bridge between your repressed, fragmented unconscious and your consciousness. All this creative work to write things down, it's weaving back together again. It's weaving back together again. So dream work, active imagination work, you can, and the active imagination work is very similar to shamanic journeying. Shamanic journeying is another technique. Enter into a trance, put on a blindfold, listen to a repetitive drum beat, envision an entrance into the underworld. Go down into the underworld and note what you see. Go down that tunnel. You're going down into your astral body. You're not going into the objective lower realm. You're going into your own astral body. And what you will find there are fragments of your astral body, and you will find there the mercurial guide. When you encounter the mercurial guide, and you never know what form he's going to take, he or she is going to take, or it could be an animal. But recognize that the guide you meet at the threshold is some manifestation of your mercurial guide. Follow it. It will take you to the fragments of your soul. So shamanic journeying is effective for retrieving these lost fragments of yourself. And shamanic journeying is also valuable for obtaining remedies. Your goal from all this inner work is to find and earn through your efforts, to earn something new, to put into those vessels that you drew, something new, a new understanding, a new increment of consciousness, some sort of boon, some sort of remedy, to put that remedy into the vessel in order to help the vessel transform. So you're going to be seeking remedies through dream work, you're going to be seeking remedies through active imagination, and you're going to be seeking remedies through shamanic journeying. Now the final technique is not for everybody, but for those who are into this, it is incredibly powerful. It is psychedelics or entheogens, entheogenic ceremony. Psychedelics are incredibly powerful tools for shadow work. They activate your astral body and they give your ego an opportunity to do tremendous alchemical work on your astral bodies. That's what entheogens do. That's what psychedelics do. They activate your astral body and they give you an opportunity to do alchemy on your astral body. You can encounter fragments of your astral body. You can reclaim fragments of your astral body. You can cleanse parts of your astral body, because the power that's in the spiritual power that's in the psychedelic, if you're working with an entheogen like mushrooms or ayahuasca or San Pedro, these have healing divine spirits in them that can cleanse you. So not only do you retrieve a part of your shadow, a part of your astral body, but you can purge and cleanse. You can cry and cleanse. You can go through, you can do many different things to actually transmute and work on illuminating the parts of your astral body that you're reclaiming. So psychedelics are very, very powerful for doing this work, and you will obtain remedies that you can put into those vessels that you drew. Now, as a disclaimer, it is dangerous to do serious psychedelic work on your own. However, I did it. Now, I got into trouble doing it, and I was using mushrooms to do shadow work, and I actually ended up falling. So you have to be very careful when you're doing shadow work with psychedelics, and I highly recommend elder guidance to guide you. Somebody who can be your external Mercurius to guide you through the process. But if you don't have that, I understand. Many of you do not have that. So I'm not going to be a hypocrite and say, if you don't have a guide, don't do it, because I didn't do that. I suffered, I made a lot of mistakes, and I learned a lot from my suffering, but I'm not going to tell you not to do what I did. If you don't have any other recourse, fine, do it on your own. But be very careful, and I encourage you, if at all possible, reach out, find elderhood. I'm even available for this kind of work. If you look in the link in the description, there's a site to book consultation sessions with me. And I'm not saying you necessarily need to do this with me. Maybe you have a friend, maybe you have a brother, maybe you have a spouse. But psychedelic work is really serious. It's very real shadow work, and it's the most intense form of shadow work that you can do. That's controversial, but the people that disagree with me are the people that don't know about psychedelics. They don't know from their own experience about psychedelics. Those who know from their own experience know that this is the most intense form of shadow work that you can do, and potentially the most rapid and potentially the most revolutionary. So that's it. Those are the 4 techniques I'm going to share with you. There's more techniques. I'm not going to get into them now, but those are the 4 techniques: dream work, active imagination, shamanic journeying, and responsible use of psychedelics. So the goal of all of these is to shift things around and gain new understandings and gain new knowledge and gain new cleansings and gain new boons that you can now introduce to those vessels of your past. So that brings us to the next stage of the process. The next stage of the process is to introduce the boons of your inner work, the boons of your trance work, into those vessels. So I want you to literally draw. Now you should always draw the stopper with an eraser so that you can erase it. Erase the stopper and draw something that you're putting into the vessel. If you drew a vessel where your sexuality got fragmented due to trauma, and then you had an active imagination dialogue with that fragment that split off, do something to create a symbol and draw that symbol going into the vessel. You're doing a work of magic when you do that. You're actually doing that to yourself by drawing it on the page in front of you. You're actually doing that to yourself. You're adding it. You're casting a positive healing spell on yourself. This is why alchemy is magic. Or you can do something ceremonial, for example. So you can take the vessel that you drew, and then you can take the active imagination dialogue with that soul fragment, you can put them together, and then you burn them together. And that's doing an act of magic. That's inserting something into the vessel. Then let it sit for a while. Keep recording your dreams. Let that simmer, and then draw the vessel again and see what's changed. Do that with all the vessels that you've done active imagination work for, that you have remedies for. If you had a dream about a particular vessel, write the dream down, take the vessel, put them together, put them in the fire. Or you can literally draw, you don't have to burn the drawing, you can draw that you're putting the dream now into the vessel. Or you can write letters to fragments of yourself and then put that into the vessel. So you can either do a ceremonial magical act with fire or bury it, some sort of like ceremonial magical act, or you can just draw the remedies going in and then let it simmer, I don't know, about a week, and then draw the vessel again and see what's changed. So do that with the most important vessels. And if you've done work with psychedelics, maybe you've received a vision, maybe you've received an understanding, maybe you've received a drawing, an image that you can draw. Put that boon of your psychedelic work into the vessel that corresponds to it. And then let it simmer, let them mingle in your unconscious, and then a week later, draw it again. You will be blown away by what happens next. I'm not going to tell you, you have to try it yourself, but you will be blown away by what you end up drawing and how you end up feeling. This is real magic, my friends. This is real magic I'm telling you about here. So, now that you've done that, you've thoroughly worked on your past and you've done a lot of work to transmute your past. Now you're ready to work on your present. Now you need to really analyze all your relationships with yourself and with everybody, every major person in your life, your spouse, your family, your friends, your coworkers. Now we move up to the present, where you really analyze the shadow work in your own life, in your current present life situation. One category is to analyze your relationship with your spouse. Analyze the sex in your relationship. If you're not in a relationship, analyze your sexual patterns, analyze your sexual behavior. If you're addicted to pornography, analyze that. When did that start? If you're addicted to certain sexual habits, analyze that. When did that start? Try to trace it back to your vessel work. How is the communication in your relationship? Is there a break in the vessel in the sexual relationship? Are you masturbating to pornography? Are you having extramarital affairs? Or are you having good sex with your spouse? This is all part of shadow work. It needs to be analyzed. Next, analyze your relationship with your family members. If you have children, analyze your relationship with your children. Analyze your relationship with your parents. Analyze your relationship with your siblings. Analyze your relationship with your in-laws. Where are the blocked pathways? Where is the traumas from the past repeating itself in the present? Now that you've done all this work on your past, now that you've done all this vessel work, you can now have an enlarged perspective on where comes the shadows in your current relationships. Next, analyze your relationship with your friends. Have you lost any friendships recently? Have you gotten into any fights with friends and broken up friendships? Do you find that people are speaking badly about you behind your back? Do you feel that you're having difficulty holding a job? Analyze your professional relationships. Do you find that there's a similar pattern that is continuing to repeat in your life? Always keep an eye when you're doing shadow work for your present moment about where your pathways are being blocked, where the energy is not flowing well. That is where the shadow work is not being done. So this is Mercurius's way of guiding you to where you need to direct your shadow work, where there is blocked pathways, where you keep getting sabotaged, where you keep sabotaging yourself. When do you get sick? Analyze your health. Health is pointing the way to shadow work. When you have shadow work to do and you're not doing the shadow work you need to do, the body can sometimes respond by falling ill. Once you've done a thorough round of analysis of your current life situation and the relationships in your life with a special eye towards where there are blocked pathways of communication, blocked pathways of sexual energy, in the case of your spouse or your romantic relationships, blocked pathways of love, where love is not flowing, where you feel resentment, where you wake up in the morning and you feel resentment towards somebody. That isn't Mercurius showing you where shadow work is necessary. After you've done that work on your present, now is time to actually do something in the realm of action to open up your pathways. Using everything you've done from all your vessel work and all your enlarged perspective on things, examine your conscience and take responsibility for your part. Withdraw projections from all your relationships. Projections are what happen when you're not working with Mercurius correctly. When you're not working with Mercurius correctly, you unconsciously project onto people, thus blocking your path, because you are putting your own personal threshold guardian on somebody else. And that person becomes a threshold guardian who blocks your path. You need to reverse the charge on that by withdrawing the projection, understanding what you projected, taking responsibility for your own projection, and confessing your conscience. So in all the relationships in your life where you've identified projections, where you've identified that you are actually just casting your shadow onto that person, that you blamed somebody, that you judged somebody, that you are holding somebody in resentment, examine your conscience and generate in yourself a conscientious apology where you confess from your heart and you take full responsibility for your own shadow. Taking full responsibility for your own shadow is the path of victory. It is the way to illuminate your shadows. It is the way to open your pathways. So for each person in your life where you've identified a blocked pathway, each person in your life where you've identified that you are suffering from pride, that you're getting rigid and stubborn due to pride, that you're judging somebody, each one of those relationships that you've been able to identify, search your soul, search your conscience, and come up with a sincere apology. Now reach out to that person and take full responsibility for your part in it with no buts. But I was just responding to, but no buts. Just take responsibility, ask for forgiveness. That's it. If you do that, you will very likely be very surprised at the way that inspires the other person to do the same. But if you throw a but in there, yeah, I did this to you, but you did this to me, you're going to block your pathways again. The secret to opening up your pathways is to take full responsibility, regardless of what the other person does. But if you do this, you will find that the other person is inspired to do the same. Both people do the same. They take responsibility for their shadows, and like magic, revolution in the relationship. Pathways open. If you do this with your spouse, you'll have the best sex of your life that night. If you do this with your friends, you will find that your friendship goes to a new level of intimacy, of love, of trust, of open pathways of communication. This is the key. So, you've done a lot of work at this point. If you followed this guidance, you've done a lot of work up to this point, and you've opened up a lot of pathways in your life. You're now ready to move on to the most advanced stage of shadow work. But I'm not going to talk about it here. I've already basically given a full course on shadow work. This is something that I talk about in my school. So if you want assistance with this work, if you're the kind of person like me who really benefits from accountability, I recommend you investigate the School of Modern Soul Science, because this is exactly the work that we do in the school. This is a community of people that are all doing this work together. They're supporting each other through the process, and they're holding each other accountable. So in the link in the description, there's a link to the school community. You have to join the community first in order to access the courses. So the link in the description is the link to the community. In the community, there is a whole curriculum of shadow work. I've just given you a sample of the kind of curriculum that we have at the School of Modern Soul Science. So if you're interested in doing this work with me as your guide and teacher, I recommend you enroll in the community and then have a look at the curriculum. So you can do shadow work on your own just by being a member of the community, or you can go further and enroll in some of the classes and do the shadow work and progress through the curriculum in the school. So if you have benefited from this little series on shadow work, and if you really liked it, genuinely liked it, please give it a like. And if you are really resonating with me as a teacher, and if you feel a trust for me as a teacher, please subscribe to the channel, because I create at least 2 videos a week, and I'm continuing to put my teachings on YouTube. So subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you get the notifications, you know the whole wrap. And if you can think of anybody who would really benefit from this, please share this with them. But at the very least, if you like this, if you watched up until now and you've liked it, please give it a like, and please give a like to all the other ones in the series. This caliber of teaching is not that common on YouTube. And this is normally the kind of material that I charge for. So I'm giving this away freely because I think it's important that people have this knowledge, but you can really give me a thank you in all the ways that YouTubers can give thank yous, okay? So I'm not going to talk about the most advanced stage of shadow work because that's something that I only speak about in the community. But if you want to check out the community, the link is in the description below. Thanks for your attention. Thanks for your sincerity. Thank you for your courage to do this work. If you're watching up until now, then you're one of those rare individuals that's a real seeker, that's really, really on a path of spiritual development, spiritual work. You're sincere about bringing down your higher self. You're sincere about discovering your higher purpose and accomplishing your higher purpose. I see you, I salute you, and check out the rest of my channel. I think you'll quite enjoy it. So this is Andrew Camargo, thanking you for your attention. Check out the School of Modern Soul Science and keep checking out this channel because I'm putting up new content all the time. Okay, that's all for now.